February 14, 1943. Solomon Islands. A Japanese naval aviator's pencil quivered as he wrote in his flight log. The words he recorded could lead to severe punishment if his superiors at Rabaul found them. The new American fighter is not what we were led to believe. It is not weak. It is something beyond our comprehension. In the chaos of battle over Guadalcanal, Japanese pilots faced the F4U Corsair for the first time. Americans would later call this incident the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. 12 Corsairs from Marine Fighter Squadron 124 engaged Japanese forces, leading to mixed outcomes. 2 Corsairs were lost, along with several other Allied aircraft. However, Japanese losses were also substantial. Despite this tactical setback, the engagement introduced a new aircraft that would drastically change the Pacific Air War. The F4U Corsair had arrived in the Pacific, bringing with it a challenge to Japanese beliefs about aerial combat, technical superiority, and the invincibility of the Mitsubishi 6M0 fighter. Little did the Japanese pilots know that they had witnessed the beginning of a shift that would reduce their elite aviators, who had dominated the Pacific skies from Pearl Harbor to Singapore, into desperate missions in outdated planes. The dynamics of aerial combat were evolving, not due to pilot skill or warrior spirit, but because of horsepower, armor thickness, and production numbers. These changes would expose the critical errors in Japan's war strategy. To grasp the psychological impact the Corsair would have on Japanese naval aviation, one must first understand the immense confidence that existed in early 1943. For 2 years, the Imperial Japanese Navy's Zero fighters had dominated the skies of the Pacific, almost unchallenged. The statistics were impressive. At Pearl Harbor, 9 Zeros were lost while they destroyed 188 American aircraft. Over the Philippines, Zero pilots claimed to have shot down 550 Allied planes in just a week, losing fewer than 40 Zeros in return. During the Indian Ocean raid, Commander Mitsuo Fuchida noted that Zeros downed 45 British aircraft while only losing 4 of their own. The kill ratios illustrated a sense of superiority, often 10-1 or better, favoring Japan. Warrant Officer Hiroyoshi Nishizawa, who Japan's top ace, with 87 confirmed victories, wrote to his younger brother in February 1943. He described the Zero as the ultimate weapon. It connected with the pilot's spirit like a samurai's sword. In contrast, the Americans built flying trucks that were heavy and clumsy. They lacked the soul that came from the unity of man and machine. This was not just propaganda. The performance of the Zero from 1941 to 1942 truly exceeded anything the Allies could produce. With a range of 1,929 miles, it could escort bombers over distances that seemed unbelievable to American strategists. Its turning radius of 612 feet at 200 miles per hour was nearly half that of the F4F Wildcat. It could reach 15,000 feet in just 5 minutes and 30 seconds, a full minute faster than its American counterparts. Lieutenant Kaname Harada, a veteran from Pearl Harbor with 19 victories who survived the war, recalled in a 1976 interview that they felt invincible in their Zeros. The aircraft responded to their thoughts, not just their control inputs. They could maneuver gracefully in the air, while American pilots struggled. Although brave, American pilots flew inferior aircraft compared to their thoroughbreds. By late 1942, however, signs of trouble were emerging, even if Japanese Naval Command refused to see it. The Battle of Midway had not only cost 4 carriers, but also 110 of Japan's most experienced naval aviators. Many of these men had over 1,000 hours of flight and combat experience in China, and they could not be easily replaced. More concerning were the technical reports coming in from the front lines. Commander Minoru Gender, the tactical planner for Pearl Harbor and future contributor to Japan's post-war air self-defense force, noted in a classified report that American fighters were increasingly hard to shoot down. The new F-6F Hellcat, seen in small numbers, appeared to take a lot of punishment. Pilots reported firing dozens of 7.7mm rounds into American aircraft with little effect. The Guadalcanal campaign revealed another worrying fact. American numerical superiority was increasing. Once Japanese pilots might face similar or fewer numbers. By early 1943, they regularly encountered groups of 20, 30, or even 50 American aircraft. The principles of Bushido could not compete with the math of industrial output. The first confirmed encounter between Zeros and F4U Corsairs took place on February 14, 1943. 12 F4U-1s from Marine Fighter Squadron 124 had just arrived at Guadalcanal. Days earlier, Corsairs escorted PB-4Y Liberators on a bombing mission. Both sides suffered losses. The Allies lost 2 Corsairs, 4 P-40s, 4 P-38s, and 2 Liberators. Japanese forces, meanwhile, lost 3 Zeros and several additional bombers. While tactically inconclusive, this engagement introduced a fighter that would soon dominate the skies over the Pacific. The technical aspects of the Corsair took Japanese analysts by surprise. The F4U-1's Pratt & Whitney R2800 double WASP engine produced an astonishing 2,000 horsepower. This was more than double the 950 horsepower of the Nakajima Sake 12 engine found in the A6M2 and the 1,130 horsepower of the Sake 21 in the later A6M5. This difference led to performance figures that made traditional Zero tactics ineffective. The Corsair reached a maximum speed of 417 miles per hour, while the A6M2 managed only 331 miles per hour, and the A6M5 reached 351 miles per hour. Its climb rate to 20,000 feet took only 7.5 minutes, compared to 12 minutes for the Zeros. Moreover, the Corsair could maintain control in dives exceeding 450 miles per hour, whereas Zeros would experience control surface freeze above 350 miles per hour. On April 7, 1943, during Operation WGO, the balance of power began to shift. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto launched his last major offensive. He sent 224 aircraft, including 110 targeting Allied positions. At Guadalcanal, they encountered 76 Allied fighters, including Corsairs from Marine Squadrons. The outcomes were devastating for Japan. They lost 39 aircraft, while only 12 Allied fighters were destroyed. Major Gregory "Pappy" Boyington, who would later command VMF 214, the Black Sheep Squadron, participated in these initial Corsair operations. He scored 28 victories and later described the emerging tactics in his autobiography, Baba Black Sheep. He noted that the Zero was enjoyable to fly and fight in at slower speeds. However, they did not stay slow. They attacked from a high altitude and at high speed, firing and then climbing away to avoid the Zero's superior maneuverability. In May 1943, Japanese technical teams analyzed captured Allied aircraft and reviewed field reports. Their findings were alarming. They discovered that the Corsair's construction showcased industrial capabilities that Japan could not compete with. Its armor plating, weighing 155 pounds and protecting the pilot, oil tank, and oil cooler, surpassed the weight of some entire Japanese trainer aircraft. The windscreen was made of bulletproof glass that measured 38 millimeters thick. It could stop 7.7 millimeter machine gun rounds at close range. The self-sealing fuel tanks had layers of rubber that expanded when pierced. This design saved many pilots from fire deaths that plagued Zero pilots. The most destructive feature was the armament. The F4U Corsair had 6 Browning M250 caliber machine guns. Each gun fired rounds that had 8 times the kinetic energy of the Zero's 7.7 millimeter guns. With a total of 2,350 rounds, the Corsair could sustain fire for 30 seconds. This was 3 times more than the Zero. The AN-M2 armor-piercing incendiary rounds could penetrate 21 millimeters of armor from 500 yards away. In contrast, the Zero had minimal armor protection. By June 1943, intelligence reports from Japanese naval headquarters revealed alarming news about American production. The United States was set to produce 12,571 Corsairs by the end of the war. This total included 4,152 F4U-1 variants and several later models. Goodyear manufactured 3,941 FG variants, and Brewster produced 735 F3A variants. In total, Japan made 10,449 Zeros throughout the war. Mitsubishi built 379, and Nakajima manufactured 6,570. However, raw numbers did not tell the whole story. American production focused on continuous improvements. The F4U-1A featured a raised cockpit for improved visibility. The F4U-1C came with 4 20mm cannons. The F4U-1D could carry 4,000 pounds of ordnance. The F4U-4, introduced in late 1944, boasted a powerful 2,450 horsepower engine and a top speed of 446 miles per hour. Meanwhile, Japan's most common Zero variant, the A6M5, showed only slight improvements over the original model from 1940. The Corsair's technical superiority highlighted a critical weakness in Japanese naval aviation doctrine. They struggled to replace experienced pilots. The Japanese naval aviation training program was intense, with a 95% washout rate producing highly skilled pilots. However, it could only generate 100 pilots each year. In contrast, the United States Navy expanded its training program. By 1943, it was producing 25,500 pilots each month. These pilots received 600 hours of flight training before heading into combat, with 200 hours dedicated to advanced fighters. In 1943, Japanese replacement pilots averaged only 100 to 150 hours of total flight time. By 1945, some kamikaze pilots had merely 40 hours. The numbers were clear. Each lost experienced Zero pilot was replaced by someone with significantly less training. Training for the Japanese pilots was only 1/6 of that for the Corsair pilots. Each Corsair pilot who was shot down was replaced by another with equal or better training. This disparity increased with every battle. Rout, Japan's stronghold in the South Pacific, turned into a graveyard for Japanese naval aviation. From October 1943 to February 1944, ongoing battles with Corsair-equipped squadrons led to losses that decimated Japan's experienced pilots. The statistics during this time reveal a story of systematic destruction. On November 11, 1943, carrier air groups, including Corsairs, targeted Rout's harbor and airfields. Of the 270 Japanese aircraft available, 35 were destroyed and 40 were damaged. By December 17, 1943, when Allied forces launched another major raid with 31 Marine Corsairs, 22 Navy Hellcats, and 23 Royal New Zealand Air Force aircraft, Japanese forces could only offer minimal resistance. The few interceptors that tried to respond were quickly eliminated. By January 1944, Japanese pilots were hesitant to engage Corsairs unless they had overwhelming numbers. This was a sharp contrast to 1941, when single Zeros would attack entire enemy squadrons. Although the F4U Corsair did not take part in the Battle of the Philippine Sea on June 19, 1944, carrier operations were mostly carried out by F-6F Hellcats. This battle showcased the complete turnaround in aerial superiority that the new American fighters had achieved. The outcome was disastrous for Japan. They lost 445 aircraft, while only 30 American aircraft went down. The kill ratio shifted from 10-1 in Japan's favor in 1941 to nearly 15-1 in favor of the United States. The few Corsairs that were present supported land-based Marine squadrons, providing cover from a distance. The battle's result reflected the technological and training advantages that made the Corsair so dominant. Japanese naval aviation never bounced back from this defeat. By late 1944, the remaining Japanese pilots faced complete psychological breakdown. They had started the war as part of the world's top naval aviation force. Now they flew knowing they were outmatched in every aspect. Saburo Sakai, Japan's top surviving ace with 64 victories, described this time in his memoir titled Samurai. He wrote about losing their edge in equipment, numbers, pilot quality, and everything else. The emergence of the new American fighters spelled doom for their younger pilots. They lacked the skills to fight and the aircraft to escape. The F4U Corsair debuted in October 1944. Its 2,450 horsepower engine, boosted to 2,760 with water injection, reached a top speed of 446 miles per hour. This aircraft shattered any remaining beliefs about air superiority. It could outmatch the Zero in every aspect of flight. The transition from elite fighter pilots to suicide attackers marked a deep acknowledgement of defeat. Vice Admiral Takejiro Onishi, who set up the first kamikaze units in October 1944, laid out the harsh reality in a briefing. He stated that if they continued with normal attacks, they would lose all their aircraft with only slight enemy losses. However, if they used special attacks, they would still lose all their aircraft, but might cause significant damage. The initial organized kamikaze strike occurred on October 25, 1944, during the Battle of Lake Gulf. 50 Zero fighters armed with 250-kilogram bombs targeted American escort carriers. Now, Corsair pilots from Marine squadrons had to intercept these suicide attacks. This was a stark change from conventional air battles. Lieutenant Yukio Seki, who led the first official kamikaze mission, expressed his thoughts before he died. He wrote that Japan's future was dark if it relied on sacrificing its best pilots. He said, "I am not going on this mission for the emperor or the empire. I am going because I was ordered to." By 1945, gathered documents and post-war evaluations showed the immense technological divide. Comparing the F4U Corsair from 1945 with the A6M5 Model 521 from 1943 provides clear facts. The maximum speed of the Corsair was 446 miles per hour, while the Zero reached only 351 miles per hour. Its service ceiling was 41,500 feet compared to the Zero's 36,250 feet. The Corsair could climb at 3,870 feet per minute, much faster than the Zero's 2,625 feet. In terms of power, the Corsair boasted 2,450 horsepower, or 2,760 with water injection, against just 1,130 horsepower for the Zero. The empty weight of the Corsair was 9,250 pounds versus the Zero's 436 pounds. The weight of armament was 6.7 pounds per second for the Corsair compared to 2.3 pounds per second for the Zero. Additionally, armor protection was 155 for the Corsair and none for the Zero. The Corsair had self-sealing fuel tanks, while the Zero lacked any protection. Post-war industrial statistics revealed Japan's untenable position. In 1944, the United States produced 100,752 aircraft total, including 16,731 fighters. Japan produced 28,180 aircraft total, with only 5,474 fighters. The gross domestic product comparison in 1944 showed the United States at $1.499 trillion 1990 international dollars, while Japan was at just $189 billion 1990 international dollars. The United States had 8 times Japan's economic output and was producing more than 3 times the number of fighter aircraft, all while ensuring superior quality. The loss statistics tell only part of the tale. By the end of the war, Japan had suffered catastrophic losses. About 25,000 naval aviators served. The United States lost 8,950 of them in the Pacific. Yet, the real tragedy lay in the details of those losses. By mid-1944, Japan had lost 90% of its trained pilots from before the war. The United States never lost more than 15% of its experienced pilot corps at any time. By 1945, Japanese pilot training had completely collapsed. New pilots received only 30 to 100 hours of flight training before going into combat. In contrast, their American counterparts had 600 hours of training. Many kamikaze pilots had never even fired their weapons before their final missions. The dominance of the Corsair forced the Japanese to change their tactical strategies. By 1944, they had standing orders that prohibited engaging Corsairs unless they had a 3-to-1 numerical superiority. Even then, they were told to make only one pass and retreat if they did not succeed. The rules for engagement against the Corsair, distributed to Japanese pilots in late 1944, highlighted their complete inferiority. They were advised never to try to outclimb a Corsair. They should not attempt to dive away from a Corsair or engage in head-on attacks, as the Corsair's armament was superior. Pilots were warned not to fly straight and level for more than 20 seconds. If attacked by Corsairs, they were instructed to execute a split S maneuver and escape at a low altitude. They could only attack when they had a significant advantage and surprise. By early 1945, the situation had deteriorated to total collapse. Japanese pilots flew aircraft that had not been properly maintained for months. They used 87-octane fuel instead of the necessary 91 or 100 octane for optimal performance, and ammunition loads were reduced to save weight. American Corsair squadrons operating from fleet carriers after December 28, 1944, when they were finally authorized for carrier operations, held overwhelming advantages in all aspects. They had radar direction, rescue services, excellent maintenance, and regular rotations home after their tours. The complete statistical record of Corsair versus Zero combat tells a story of total American dominance. The overall combat record of the Corsair shows total aerial victories of 2,140, Combat losses numbered 189. This resulted in a kill ratio of 11.3 to 1. Specifically against the Zero, confirmed kills stood at 162, while Corsairs lost only 124, leading to a kill ratio of 12.6 to 1. In terms of pilot survival, 64% of American pilots who were shot down survived, while only 8% of Japanese pilots did. The Corsair epitomized American industrial philosophy, solving problems through overwhelming material superiority. The Zero embodied Japanese philosophy. It focused on achieving maximum effectiveness with minimal resources. When these approaches clashed in battle, material abundance proved to be the clear winner. Jiro Horikoshi, the designer of the Zero, reflected on this after the war. He said he created a fighter for a nation with limited resources. Meanwhile, the Americans built a fighter for a nation rich in resources. His design was an elegant fix for scarcity. The American design was a powerful display of abundance. In warfare, abundance prevails. During the American occupation, Japanese military personnel accessed detailed insights into American aircraft production. The figures astonished them. Chance Vought alone manufactured nearly as many Corsairs as Mitsubishi built Zeros. The cost per aircraft was significant, ranging from $50,000 to $75,000 for a Corsair, compared to about $25,000 for a Zero. This difference didn't signify waste, it indicated quality. Americans invested more because they prioritized pilot safety. The Corsair's supremacy imparted crucial lessons to Japanese aviation, shaping development in the post-war era. Technology outstrips tradition. No level of pilot expertise can compensate for inferior equipment. Quantity carries its own advantages. Mass production of decent aircraft is more effective than the limited production of great ones. Survivability is crucial. Dead pilots cannot gain experience. Industrial capacity dictates capabilities. The nation with the most efficient factories prevails. The rate of innovation is more critical than initial advantages. Static superiority soon turns into inevitable inferiority. These insights became foundational elements of Japan's post-war industry, helping catalyze the economic miracle that followed. The narrative of Japanese pilots confronting the F4U Corsair illustrates the clash between tradition and modernity. The Zero represented the peak of lightweight design. Every element was minimized, and every gram mattered. The Corsair symbolized industrial wealth, strength, protection, and firepower without compromise. When these ideologies conflicted in the Pacific, the result was unavoidable. No level of pilot skill, warrior tradition, or spiritual commitment could counteract the stark reality of double the horsepower, 6 times the firepower, and substantial armor protection against none. The Japanese pilots, who never anticipated that the F4U Corsair would rout their Zero squadrons, faced one of the most profound psychological shifts in military history. They entered the conflict confident in their superiority. They found themselves flying outdated aircraft and using old tactics. They faced an enemy with vast industrial power. The F4U Corsair did not just take down Zero fighters, it dismantled a whole way of thinking. It showed that industrial strength was more powerful than warrior spirit. Technology overtook tradition, and protecting pilots became more crucial than minimizing weight. These harsh lessons learned over the Pacific would help change Japan from a militaristic empire into one of the world's most successful peaceful democracies and industrial nations. The bent-wing fighter, known as Whistling Death to Japanese pilots, ironically became a tool for Japan's renewal. By showcasing the clear superiority of industrial democracy over militaristic traditions, the Corsair helped guide Japan towards becoming one of the strongest allies of the United States and a successful economic partner. The pilots who lived through their encounters with the Corsair carried valuable lessons forward. In today's world, the nation that possesses the best technology and the most efficient production ultimately prevails, whether in times of war or peace.